So I want to talk about a couple of things. One thing that we're gearing towards is trying to see how we can more closely attain sustainability and what that looks like. So I want to mention firstly that my name is Ali Darul. I established an organization called Writer Cooperative Industry that's based around bringing engineers together to be able to do sustainable works for changing the fabric of what we do in the city. Trying to talk about like what's the importance of having sustainability. Like, so actually with that, like what are some reasons why sustainability will be important to actually some of us right now in the room? Like, what does sustainability mean?
We're about to get cut off from their source. So we need some sustainability.
2020?
It's getting start fast. It might even be before then.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of us, we've already seen.
Yes, they install lights over there. Highland Park is a great example, already cut off.
So a lot of places, like, so for me, you know, I mean, so when we experienced that blackout in like 2003.
Whiteout.
When the power went out, like everybody on the eastern coast like had absolutely no power. So you had no power, no communications, no nothing. So in Highland Park, and this has happened again recently, like in the past couple of months, where Detroit had like about 80,000 people or 800,000 people without power due to the wind. So DTE was like working to like get that up, and then you know Highland Park has all their street lights removed and repossessed. So it's been a battle, like being able to work and get power that's in our name or that we have control over. But I would like to get some ideas like what sustainability looks like to some people. Like what does that, when you hear sustainability, what word comes to mind?
Water for me.
Water?
Yeah. Clean water.
Clean water. Energy.
Healthy food.
Healthy food. Just basic necessities, right? Basic necessities. Okay. Before I'm going to come back to RCI, but before I go into that, I want to kind of tie everything together and give us somewhat of a framework to be able to take some of the information that we got today, understand how it works, how it's relevant, and how it applies to us now, right? So first, everything, like if we're looking to make some kind of substantive change in the world, right, we want to look at results, right? We want to see like, well, I know that I want this particular result out in the world, right? So I want it to look a certain type of way. So, we want some result, right? Some kind of measurable result, right? Now, how do you know that this result is happening, right? So one thing that you can do is actually like measure behaviors. So like if you're saying, hey, I want my child to sit down, right? I want a particular result that they sit down, right? If I tell them to sit down, do they sit down, right? So them sitting down is a behavior. Right? But, so this is like, if we look at it like it's a house, essentially, like this is the attic, right? A lot of times we try to look towards getting the results, but we don't, when we look at the behavior of like what it is that we want to change, and what the result that it is that we want out in the world. But there's levels to it. So like this is like the ground level, right? But underneath behavior is thinking. So like what do you think about a person, right? Like you ask your child to sit down and they don't do it for a reason. They don't do it because it doesn't occur to them to think that, or they're like, well, why should I listen to you? You're not my daddy. Like that's a thought that happens, right? That's a thought that happens. So like, and this happens in life with children. This happens at your job. Like your boss is coming to talk to you or something like that. He's like, get this report down by blah 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 blah. And you're like, why do I need to listen to you? It's like, but it all comes with like how you think about something. And then up under that is how you feel about something, like your feelings, right? So this is all going to bubble up, right? So actually getting some result out of getting sustainability, because what we have right now is systemic of a reason why we aren't able to coalesce and like pull our economics together, pull our resources together, because we're being hit at several different angles, and that's preventing us to be able to coalesce and do that. So they're preventing us to be able to have results, right? They have similar opportunities as other groups of people, right? Exactly, they're preventing us from having certain behaviors, right? They try to entrain us to have certain behaviors that aren't really natural to us, natural to our culture. And so that prevents us from being able to move forward, right? They prevent us from being able to think. Well, we can think how we want to think, but they entrain us to think certain types of ways due to some of the inputs that I'll give you later on. Right? So like how your feelings is another thing, right? So even if you get a hold of what to think, right, your feelings is another thing, right? So if you get up and you're trying to make some result, right, like you got to talk one day and you need to, you're nervous, right? You're on edge or something like that. But somebody said, well, don't worry, just relax. Just don't worry about it. Well, that makes me more nervous, because like you can't just reason somebody into getting a particular result or thinking a certain type of way. It's like you have to get them to feel it. So like, and actually, feelings and thinking work together, right? So your thinking controls your feelings, right? But your feelings also control your thinking. It's a feedback loop that goes on. So thinking controls feeling, and feeling controls thinking, and actually your feelings is actually the more dominant of the two. So, and actually, really, and this is true, in order to get people to think differently, you have to change the way that they feel. This is why church feels so good. This is why people go there, get saved, give the Holy Ghost, give however many hundreds of dollars.
Why are you so reactionary?
I'll get into that. I'm getting to that, right? So being able to understand the dynamic or the consciousness mechanics that goes behind how we operate on a daily basis and the actions that are going behind the scenes. And the reason I bring this up is because this is something that I've been looking at in my personal life, like deconstructing myself in terms of what makes me me, what am I really, like am I just a bunch of electrons in my head, or where do I really exist, and how do I actually hack this vehicle to be able to understand how it works instead of having other outside entities dictate how I feel. So if we're trying to be self-determined as a group, it's important that we be self-determined individually first, because the group is a collection of individuals. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So next, up under that, right? So even if you get an understanding of your feelings, right? Even that's still not enough, because you have to get to the base level of your emotions. Right? And some might say, well, isn't that the same thing? And no, they're not, right? Emotions and feelings aren't the same thing. I mean, feelings and thinking aren't the same thing, right? And a lot of times they collapse these down together, right? For example, like, and men and women typically have a difference in this. Right? Like, you ask a man how he feels, he'll typically tell you how he thinks. And if you ask a woman how she feels, she'll typically tell you her emotions, like what's physically going on. Like, I have this sensation, my leg is this, my leg is that. You ask a guy, well, I think today was a good day. It's like, well, how do you feel? Mm-hmm. So your feelings is the awareness of these emotions. Does that make sense? You got that?
So you're negating the thought.
One more time?
You're negating the thought, saying it's emotions that tie in your feelings. You just gave an example about...
Oh, yeah.
So you're saying the women are more correct. I'm just joking.
Oh, I got you. I mean, I believe so. Right? Being authentic with your that's a good observation. But then even once you get down to your emotions, right? Your emotions are just the streams of data that's going through your body, right? So like your heart rate is having a particular rate, and blood is going through certain capillaries of your arm, hand, and your ligaments, right? So if for some reason, right, my heart rate is elevated, right, and my palms get sweaty, right, and my eyes start to dilate, right. I might be actually feeling I might be physically having the emotion of anxiety. That's what an anxiety is your heart and your all these physiological things happening in a certain range that are either higher or lower, that actually put you in a particular state, right? And your awareness of that state is a feeling, right? So if you're aware that, wow, I'm kind of nervous, my heart's racing, my hands kind of jittery, I might be nervous, right? But a lot of times we go through life with these symptoms, with these physiological things going on, right? But we don't have the awareness that they're happening. They're just happening to us, and we're just going through life like, unaware of what's going on, right? And so this is like the basements. I mean, that's what I study more and more now. So, because I understand, like, that's what makes us who we are, right? So your physiology at the very basic level, you have to have a hold on, right? And so we interact with the world through our physiology, through our five senses, right? Through our senses, and these five senses are the things that we actually all discussed when we first asked the question, what is sustainability, right? So being able to have clean water as an input is important because it helps our physiology, so we can stabilize our emotions, so it can stabilize our feelings, so it can stabilize our thinking, so our behaviors can come out and be what we want them to do, and we can actually have a different actionable result in the real world. Right? Yeah, exactly. So being able to have a hold on these physiology, on these inputs is important. So, for example, for having water, you mentioned clean food, images. Images are important because the brain primarily understands images. So images is much more powerful than just writing words. So if you give somebody an image like of a white Jesus, that says more things than you just writing it out on paper, like physically seeing it, because every time you see that now, you're associating that with every other white person that you would see. So it's like, oh, well, that's Jesus, even though it's on a really near subconscious level. As well as sounds or music, right? So it's really important that our sounds are authentic to us, because once it filters up, it's like we're very divine, esoteric, like quantum computers, like each of us in a way, right? Because all we are is just energy, right? Or just energy packets that are moving energy in different forms and ways around our body and out into the world, right? Me talking right now is a form of energy, right? What I'm thinking in my head, right? I can speak it and make my lips move and traverse air to you, and you understand what I'm saying on the other side, right? It's just a transfer of energy. By the time all of these filter up, right, the result that's going to come out is going to be a result of what's going in, and it really can't be anything other than that. So if you're eating food that's not really designed for you to eat, or drinking like, sugary drinks, that's, we all do it from time to time, but if you overindulge in these things that the body wasn't designed to be able to handle, your output is not going to be as optimal as it could be, right? So if we're trying to get sustainability, having that internally is one of the first things that we want to try to seek, right? So like having sounds, having music that is our own is important. Having images is our own is important. Being able to have clean food, non-GMO food is really important to be able to make sure that our physiology is proper, right? And Right. So yeah. So if we're looking towards what's that, sustainability, and then so some of the work that we do with RCI, even though it's and actually I'm not going to play because it's energy. Because now energy is not really one of those things that we look at as like a luxury anymore. Like it's not really like a novel type of thing. Like a lot of now you can't really live unless you have energy, unless you have power, because we're so tied into it now. And also having that transition between going from this 21st century age, from having high technology to now what I've been observing is more agrarian, like having localized urban farms. I've been seeing a lot more of those pop up. But being able to have a just transition to get from where we are now to the interstitial space in between and not necessarily lose a lot of people along the way. So that's these two things is actually what RCI tries to target, is giving people energy solutions, but as well images of what that looks like, right? Because being able to introduce something into people's psyche, I believe, is important. Because there's a lot of things that, you know, if you, and somewhere in here is also, I'll just say somewhere in here is belief, right? So if you see something, if you think something enough and you feel it enough, if you have this feedback loop enough, then it'll automatically come out to be a belief that you have, regardless if you realize it or not. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times people don't really believe that they can have certain things. I went to a fundraising workshop on Friday. Laka was there, and it was a partner of mine called Jackson Coble that was putting it on for a partner organization that I have. And they were talking about like fundraising and like what are some of our so he played a game, right? He asked like what are some, let's play a word association game. Like what is one thing that comes to mind when you think of money? Like shout some things out. Like when you think of money, what do you think about? Anything that comes to mind? Is it energy? Buying whatever you want. Security, that's good. Now what do you think about when you think about asking for money? Discomfort. I've got it. And so those are like emotional barriers that we have towards money, right? And these are things that are actually ingrained into us. Some of it's through our physiology, right? Some of it's through DNA that's been transferred down to us from our ancestors that we don't necessarily have any control over, right? But another portion is environment, right? Which we're trying to work towards having a better control over, right? We still don't control it completely, but we're trying to work at grassroots level to be able to get more control over our environments in terms of what things can stay and what things can't, like trying to get the Detroit incinerator shut down because it's not renewable energy, and the air it's producing is actually polluting the neighborhoods around them, and people still have to live in those neighborhoods. Right? So, but yeah, like having that aversion to like asking for money.
Yeah, so I use technology and I put it in a format on here and I send it.
Yeah.
So like, what's gonna pay me to talk to me? Push that button. I tell you.
But being able to overcome some of these barriers, I believe is really important, and it takes some work and it takes some healing to be able to do. But being able to show people, like images of things that weren't necessarily possible before, that they never seen. Like I work with Mama Ava, helping to put together a power station to get D-Town Farm off the grid. And prior to that had never been done, and people really didn't believe that it could happen because they had never seen it happen before. So the purpose of that was actually show an image to the people so that it could actually be interjected into the beliefs and then propagated here. Right. So that from here, then the people's behaviors would change around them thinking about renewable energy. And since then, the number of projects that require renewable energy or that demand renewable energy have increased, and the number of projects that are like community-led have also increased. And so the result of sustainability has been increased on that level. So yeah, so I do believe that being able to understand like how we think, why we think is really important, as well as being mindful of some of the beliefs that we have, and to validate them from time to time. Like I try to do this myself. I like, is what I'm believing true? Can I ground it in some type of truth, or do I, at least really like, is it grounded in something that I can kind of grasp onto, and then let that feed back into it.
I think that was one of the reasons why I felt moved to do this work, because that work with the facts, science, and astrology, complying, could alter the thinking and the feelings and the emotions, which could lead to fearlessness that would allow us to do things that change the physiology.
Yeah.
I would like to add on too. I really want to humbly thank you for being a confirmation for me in my belief system and what's going on here in Detroit. Everything you just spoke of, I couldn't articulate that to people because most people are rooted in the physicality of the DNA of fear of what has happened to us in the past, and they doesn't really realize the power that we're actually living in today, and it's actually here. So I can share D-Town Prime or other places and tell them to go and look and see. But a lot of people think that they're looking at gentrification and all these words that they throw out there to keep you in fear, and because you connect with that, you make it so.
Exactly.
Even if you don't believe in it, the more you give it energy, the more you make it so.
Exactly.
So I try to bring the other side, because we're gods and goddesses, we have the ability to manifest anything, adverse or heaven or hell. But if you with Abba, you had a need, they didn't believe it, and you manifested it. And it's like you said, it's growing. And I thank you for that. I so thank you for that, and I'm going to keep projecting. There's more light beings that's going to come and show and prove to Detroiters. We are so much greater than we give ourselves credit for, and it's actually here. Just go ahead and be a part of it. Just be a part of it. Don't be a part of that adversity.
Be a part of it. That's right.
Thank you for
Support it.
I'd like to add here and say I've kind of been, it's funny that you talk about this because I've kind of been researching fear. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and they say that, as a baby, you're only born with two fears, the fear of falling and the fear of a loud noise. Everything else is taught. So we learn to be afraid of all these different things, and a lot of the time fear is nothing but a control. If you really look at it, if you watch the news, every day there's something else that you should be afraid of.
A specific agenda.
Because it throws you off your alignment. If you're afraid of something, you can't line up with what you're supposed to be doing.
Constantly trying to be on that.
You got.
And I look at it as a challenge. I look at it as in the greater thing of the design. We get too comfortable with depending on other people for our things, and that's not how we were created. That's not what we're really here for. So yes, we got to have some pain, some adversity, some things taken, some things to make you reevaluate yourself and what really is your belief. Is it outside yourself, or is it really inside your core? And I feel like that's what's happening now, and I really thank you for that. I speak about you a lot and share it as in my fact, as an image. Go check this brother out. It is happening. It's maybe not something that I'm necessarily doing, but it is done, and it's real. And it can be expanded upon if that's your interest. If you don't like it, that means you might have some energy to add on to it, but you only know to tear it down because that's what we've been taught.
Exactly. And I think.
Anything that you want to say to kind of close us out, and then everybody can stay and ask any of the presenters any questions that you like. Somebody you want to take us on here?
So, I would like to be. So I'm thankful, one, for my mom for having. I've never really had an inferiority complex. I know that that's something that does plague a lot of people in our community. And I think that's having that in place right here has allowed me to feedback so that I was able to get the work done that I felt that I needed to get done this generation. But being able to share that with people and try to get them out of that fear base, I believe is really important. So as much as we can, to try to stand in like peace, love, art, like our culture. Mm-hmm. Our culture is not really a fear culture. So it's like as soon as we start worrying about lack and there's not going to be enough, like we come from Africa where there's like everything there, like every resource that is possible that's made comes from our soil first. So it's like we shouldn't have a lack mentality. So first getting out of that, I think will be one of the first steps towards being able to jump towards this sustainable kind of economy. But being able to think about, our economics in a different type of way, not having an aversion towards being able to ask for help, being able to ask for support. I think that's something that we've been trained out of doing. But being able to be more open with that, I think is going to get us towards some of our next steps of leveling up, as Mama Gia was mentioning, so we can kind of level up to create the world that we're looking for.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.